go to speaker view in your top right-hand corner, and it'll make Michael the center of the screen. Click on Michael's picture. So, thank you. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. You've been spying on me. Thank you.
Yes.
We have no secrets here, I guess. Well, I was going to invite you to come on my little time machine here, Michael's little spaceship, and trying to get a handle on what my spiritual journey has been interesting for me. I don't know how much clarity I actually have on it, but what I'm feeling is significant, has jumped out at me, I'll share with you. So the first stop, we're going back to 1968, where I was in Vietnam, and I was in the central highlands of Pleiku province, and that would have been in the fall of November of 1968. And at that time, I was knocked down by rockets for the second time. And the first thing you do is you kind of look around and make sure all your parts are still there. And then the voice came into my head, said, "What is this all about? I have no desire to kill anybody, and they don't even know me. And more importantly, why is all of recorded history one conflict after another? Clearly, there's something that we as a species are not getting. We're missing some significant learning here that has been going on for pretty much all of history. And what is that?" So that's been a quest of mine ever since then. And it's kind of scary to think that that was 52 years ago, but here we are. Vijay mentioned the book I'm writing, Transcending the Conflict Continuum. And the idea of the continuum is that there's conflict that can manifest on any level, from inter or intrapersonal all the way across to world war. And my sense now is that wherever that manifests, that no matter at what level on that continuum, there are some fundamental causes that are always the same. And the first one that has to have happened, I believe, for conflict to show up is somebody, probably unconsciously, asked themselves the question, "Who am I?" and came up with an answer way too small. Because if we really got the answer to who we are, there's no way we'd even think about fighting the things we fight about. So the second thing that came to mind, that's the fundamental cause. The second cause is, since we don't know the answer to who am I, we have made up a definition, an egoic self-definition, based on our parents' beliefs or our ethnic or our gender, where we grew up, what our peer groups were. So we have this egoic, artificial self-definition that we're living with while we try to remember and figure out who we actually are. So those two identities are kicking around inside of us everywhere. And one thing that I believe that every human being shares, no exceptions, is we are all seeking a sense of fulfillment. Each one of us wants to feel good inside, and in my writing, I call it fulfillment. And the significant part of how we identify ourselves is when we act from our egoic self-definition, we act thinking that fulfillment is found out here in the material world. And the reality is who we really are. There is nothing big enough out there in the material world to fulfill us. So we reach out there seeking for something that does not exist out there. One of my favorite quotes is, "You can never get enough of what you don't really want." And so we're actually living in a world where that's being demonstrated pretty dramatically, because we have the wealthiest, most powerful people in the world wanting more. And the other significant parts about that reaching out is there is what I'll call the beast of tyranny and aggression. I know if I went and talked to my family and all my friends and each one of you, and I asked you the question, how many of you would like to see more war? Nobody would raise their hand. And I suspect if you went to your families and friends and loved ones and asked that question, how many would like more war? Nobody would raise their hand. but still we have it. So there's some small percentage of the world population that wants there to be war. But the question that arose in me is, I don't believe that they could be successful at having war unless all the rest of us were somehow contributing to that. We are contributing to the conflict in the world in some unconscious way. And if we get a handle on that, we could make a huge difference. So how do we do that? So just for reference in a few minutes, I would ask each one of you to just take a second and go back inside yourself and try to remember a moment when you were in grade school. You're still a young tyke, still in grade school, and you had some level of success at something. Maybe it was sports, maybe it was grades, maybe it was artistic expression, could be anything. But just keep that to yourself, just bring that to mind of some level of success that you had back in 8th grade. So for me, let's just say it was the 100-yard dash. That's an example that I like to use. And if I run the 100-yard dash in 10 seconds or less, I feel really good about myself. But the reality is it has nothing to do with 10 seconds. Because if everybody else is running it in 5 seconds, I would not feel good. The only reason I feel good about myself is it puts me in the 98th or 99th percentile of the population. So in order for me to feel good about myself, I have to beat a huge percentage of the population. And it doesn't matter what my criteria is. If I'm looking externally, whether it's power or money or what my house looks like or what my title is or anything external, we have to beat each other to feel good about ourselves. So if you go back and think about whatever thing you came up with that you were successful in grade school, think about that in terms, how do you know you were successful? Because we were programmed really, really early that we had to beat each other. So occasionally somebody might not be able to remember something that they felt successful about. But I would suggest that even in that situation, you will put yourself in a place where you were still comparing yourself externally to others and could not measure up in your own mind. So you were still reaching out to find success, but you felt failure. So that's a critical piece. So 2 things happen when we reach out. The first thing that happens is we put a string out there, and I referred to the beast earlier who might want to see war happen. That beast will use that string that we reached out into the material world with, and he's the puppeteer. He will be jerking that string at every opportunity to use us to create conflict. So that's a key piece. So what are the choices? It's really very simple. It says either we reach out into the material world for fulfillment, or we reach from within and bring that out. It's kind of like energy management. Either the energy we're steering, we're trying to reach out to bring it in, or we're trying to reach in to bring it out. If we reach in to bring it out, it looks like gratitude or appreciation or love or forgiveness. All of those things we all highly value. And those, when we keep those going, I think of it as kind of a light stream of grace, maybe, that's flowing down through me, out my heart, and into the world. And if I can keep that flow going, I believe that will actually heal anything we have to go on. Any old wounds, any problems, any issues inside of us from way back when, or even from our lineage, if we were able to keep that flow going. And when we reach out, not only do we give the puppeteer a string to make us dance, we also block the flow of that light that's flowing through us. And I think of it kind of like a garden hose. If you hadn't had it turned on for quite a while, you first turn it on, it kind of spits and sputters and stones come out, and it's kind of a herky-jerky kind of flow. But if we keep it flowing, then it becomes a clear stream. And that's how kind of how I picture it. It's the other way I found to be a really useful tool for me personally right now is whenever I'm upset or irritated about anything going on in the world, I think oh, Michael, you're reaching out to bring it in. And I switch it back to gratitude or love or appreciation or forgiveness. And that gets the flow going back out again. And that irritation subsides. And I keep that flow going. The one of those that I really like to think about a little bit is forgiveness, and just kind of highlight that. Forgiveness, I feel now, is such an interesting tool for the reversal of that energy flow. Because if I feel the need to forgive somebody, that need doesn't come up unless I've judged them or they've disappointed me. I had something I wanted out there in the material world and they didn't give it to me, or they did something I didn't appreciate, or whatever. But at some level, I was reaching out into the material world probably. And as soon as I switch into forgiveness, that energy flow is released and reversed. And then forgiveness is actually no longer needed because I've switched back into who I actually am. And once we realize that, there's a realization that everybody's doing the best they can. There's no reason to forgive. But it's such a valuable, useful tool for switching that flow. So those are from 1968 realizations, I guess we'll call it. There was one other thought that I came to me in a meditation a while back, and it highlighted for me how dependent we are on one another for our self-experience. And in that meditation, I connected with a person on an island, and that person had never seen another human being, had lived on this island the whole time. And in hindsight, I believe that that person on the island was also me. I think this was a conversation with myself, but the conversation was very simple and very enlightening for me. And the questions that I asked that person on the island were very simple. It were things like, are you tall? They had never seen another human being. Are you good looking? Are you a good singer? Are you a fast runner? Are you religious? Are you a spiritual being? Are you a good cook? None of those things would that person have a way to answer because there's no relativity there if you're there by yourself. And I thought, wow, we are so dependent on each other for our personal experience of mostly everything. Probably why we were created, so we could have those interactions. I think back when maybe there was just a God, there was none of those interchanges. There's nobody to love or touch, etc. So that was 1968. So fasten your seatbelts. There was one last piece of that puzzle I just realized I forgot. I realized that when we reach out into the material world, the best we can do is a fleeting sense of gratification. It's kind of like having one of mom's cookies. It's really good, but I soon need another one. Boom. So what we can do out there is not fulfillment, but a fleeting sense of gratification. Pretty much everything we reach out for. So fasten your seatbelts. We're going up to 1984 in just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, where I did my first ever personal growth workshop at the behest of an old girlfriend who thought that I might enjoy it. At the time I questioned, why does she think I need a personal growth workshop? I hadn't seen her in a year and I valued her opinion and appreciation and appreciated her gift. She wanted to treat me to it, so that was great. But I had an experience in that training that shifted my entire life. And in the training, I went physically paralyzed. It's like spirit hit me between the eyes in a way that I could not ignore. And I thought, wow, it was a serious wake-up call. And while I was paralyzed, internally, I was given some information. The first information I was given was my belief system is as unique as my fingerprint. And there is no other human being on this planet with exactly the same belief that I have. And I realized I had kind of thought, you know, Vijay mentioned I was raised Catholic, and I thought if I was in the same church and we were all in the same pew, we pretty much had the same belief system. But when I sank deeper into it, I realized, no, they were right. It's really individually unique. And the flip side of that coin that I was shown was that there's also nobody on this belief system, on this planet, whose belief system does not overlap with mine. So that was a wake-up call. So that might be just babies are precious or roses are beautiful or whatever, but there's some overlap in every one of those. So I'm going to, for those of you who are visually oriented, I'm just going to show you the diagram that I was shown internally while I was paralyzed. And this is what it looked like. I don't know if that shows up very well. That small circle represented my belief system. The big circle, they didn't tell me what was all in it, but was described as truth. And that part of what I believed is true, and part of what I believe is not true. And that my challenge in life is to move my belief system into truth. So this goes back to the Vietnam experience a little bit, because that choice of, am I living from the true answer of who am I? Or am I living from my egoic self-definition? And this small circle is some combination of who I truly am and my egoic self-definition. So that was a profound realization for me. That was the first level of it. The second level of it was that not only is that my belief system, but that is in fact my egoic self-definition. So that, you know, it looks really simple. It looks like, oh, here's a piece of the truth, or Vijay or someone shares a piece of truth with me and I just slide in there. But since it's part of my egoic self-definition, my ego experiences that as a death threat. The reason that I went paralyzed in that training was because there was a higher level of truth or a higher level of wisdom available to me in the training. And we literally carry our belief system in the cells of our body. And so my body literally was shutting down to protect me from the higher wisdom that was available to me, but was a threat to my egoic self-definition. That was such a profound awareness to me that I actually made a commitment at that time, when I realized the power of what I was believing, to put myself at least once every 6 months with a teacher or a new experience or a new perspective, a new country, something that would offer a new perspective and challenge my belief system in some way. So that was a significant eye-opener, awakening for me personally. And this is the same diagram, but this demonstrates me and any one of you, any other human being on the planet has a piece, overlaps with my belief system and has a piece of the truth that I don't yet have. And to the degree that I am defending the perimeter of my belief system, I will never have. In fact, I will go paralyzed. So each one of you has a piece of the truth that I don't yet have. And unless I'm undefended enough and my ego, I'm willing to do the death and resurrection process daily, I will never have. The flip side of that coin that they showed me was also, I can never give away my personal responsibility for the truth that I live to anyone else, because all the possibilities are here. So if this is me and one of you, we may disagree and both be in truth, or we may agree and both be in truth, or we may disagree and both be wrong, or we may agree and both be wrong. So it's about going into our heart space, being open to new possibilities of truth, and when it resonates, and in fact is true, we will slide in a little further. Vijay mentioned that I had designed a training called The Edge, and it was so much fun. We had a great time. I had amazing people. And the edge was the idea of how do we go to the edge of our belief system productively? Because all the magic, all the healing, all the transformation is only available out here on the edge. So if we learn to go there productively, it's a huge resource, a huge opportunity. And others doing it with us is really a fabulous resource. In the EDGE training, I expanded the definition of this circle a little bit beyond belief system, then egoic self-definition. The third term I use is the comfort zone. And we hear that so much these days. I'm not comfortable with that idea. No, sir. That's a desire to stay here. And the ego, in its self-defense, will take every new piece of information and try to adapt it or modify it so that it stays in here in the comfort zone. And I know in the work that you all do, you constantly probably have conversations with people who aren't comfortable with that. And we certainly see that in the world today big time. So that comfort zone is a good key. And we learned in the training that when somebody's uncomfortable with something, that's great news, because they're in the realm of the magic. The opportunity is right there. And the last use of this circle, which is very powerful, is it's also our personal environment. So I grew up in Michigan, no palm trees growing in Michigan, palm trees growing everywhere here in Kauai. So things only grow in an environment that supports their growth. So in terms of healing, for example, a person may have a cancer or something, and they may go in and have another piece cut out every couple of months or so, but do nothing to change this environment. So that cancer will keep growing there because it's normal in the environment that supports its existence in the first place. Another person may go to the doctor and the doctor says, it's a miracle. We must have misdiagnosed, it's gone, whatever. What that person has done is do something to change this personal environment of their body, mind, emotions, and spirit in such a way that they moved it somewhat more into truth, so that what was normal to grow in that environment is no longer normal, and it disappears, it's gone. So this journey is really quite magical when really engaged with. So that's what the EDGE training was about and is about when I do it. We've had so much fun. The people wanted to keep going. So we, after 3 months, we did a thing called the Water's Edge and chartered some sailboats and went on sailing for a while. And then they wanted to do more. So we did into the Canadian wilderness for canoeing and sweat lodge and ropes courses. And we pushed all the edges we could find. And when that happens, so much magic happens. I'd love to share it with all of you. It'd be great. So I'm going to take another jump on the time shuttle here, and we're going backwards this time. I'm going back into the 1950s. So hang on tight. This was a little personal history. My father was a devout Catholic, very devout Catholic. One of the things he taught me was an appreciation for the integrity with which he lived his beliefs. Unfortunately, we didn't all share the same beliefs all the time, so that got a little feisty now and then, but he was such a good man. And my mother married him, but to marry him, she converted to the Catholic Church. And the interesting part of that dynamic is my father was an only child, and my mother was one of 9 children. So in about 4th grade, I went to a little Catholic school called Our Lady of Sorrows, a real cheerful kind of name. And in about 4th grade, I was taught in catechism class, I think it was, that if you weren't baptized in the Catholic Church, I can't remember exactly if they said you would go to hell or you couldn't go to heaven, but it was something that bothered me quite a bit. And the reason it bothered me, because in my family, we were all really tight-knit. And we got together in Michigan and all the relatives gathered for Christmases and Thanksgiving and summer vacations. And all kinds of events, birthdays. So as this fourth grader, I thought about this idea of not being baptized in the Catholic Church, and I realized that all my aunts and uncles, my grandparents on my mother's side, all my cousins, none of them were going to heaven, apparently. The only ones that were Dad and our immediate family. And I immediately knew that, nah, that doesn't work. And that was a gift to me because I didn't ever buy into most of the dogma that gave me hiccups. But on the other hand, I was an altar boy from 4th grade through 12th grade. And while not buying the dogma, there was a part of me that just loved being around the sacrament of communion. That energy was so palpable to me. I could feel it. And I think now it's something that reminded me of home. And it also ties into that idea of who are we really? Because that communion sense is, I think, a reminder of who we actually are. And I'll just share my own, a little bit of personal biblical interpretation. So you probably won't find this in any other textbooks, but as I sat with the Garden of Eden story, what it feels like is being described is us as pretty evolved spiritual beings, checking out Earth, checking out this third dimension. And whoops, I'm getting a low battery here charge. Now, why would that be? Okay, I think we're charging. We were pretty high spiritual beings, and we chose to take our sustenance from the third dimension. And I think that's what the apple symbolized. And in doing so, we became dense. Again, we became that lower self-definition that could no longer hold that higher frequency that was available to us because it was higher than the density that we became. So God comes and Adam and Eve are hiding in the bushes or wherever, and he says, "What are you hiding from?" And he said, "Well, we're naked." And they said, "Well, who told you we're naked?" I mean, when we're back in that oneness place, nobody's going to care if we're naked or not naked. We're just one. And there'd be nobody to tell us that we're naked. Nobody would even notice. So those were little indications to me that taking our sustenance, or in other words, reaching out for fulfillment into this third dimension again, is the problem. It gets us in trouble. And then I moved back to the Last Supper, back to communion, back to this idea of oneness. And I think Jesus came in the Last Supper and gave us the antidote to the apple. As he spoke in parables, I believe that the heart is the vineyard, the fruit of the heart is love, and the fruit of the vineyard is wine. And the mind is the bread, the fruit of the mind is wisdom, and the fruit of the wheat field is bread and wisdom. So I think what he was saying was, feed yourself with this love and this wisdom. Take yourself back to that higher frequency, and you will be able to hold the truth. You will rediscover that truth just by living at that higher frequency that we fell from when we chose to feed ourselves from the material world. So that was a huge piece of the puzzle for me. And that goes back to the question, who am I? Who are we really? And that's a way to get there. Communion is that attitude. So that brings us back to today. We'll jump on that time ship again. We've got so much going on here. And in order to deal with it, I think that first question of who am I is critical. And then the second question of how do I reach in to bring it out? Those two are keys to the solutions to all the issues we're dealing with. There's a couple of quotes that are flying around in my head that I think are happening big time right now. We all think of this as classroom earth, which is, I think, an apt metaphor. We're here to learn so much. I think we're also living in what I think of as health club earth. And I understand the health clubs are opening in a few days, which I'm looking forward to. But I think Earth is a training ground where we're being trained to go to a place where every thought, every action, every word is an instant manifestation. Thank God that's not here now. We got training wheels on here now, but we're learning, we have an opportunity to develop the spiritual muscle to hold this flow going out rather than reach in, so that every thought word is a high level manifestation as we express it here. But that takes tremendous spiritual muscle because we have so much temptation and we have the beast trying to manipulate us at every turn. So that what it looks like to me often is we've got 100 pounds or whatever on the bar at the health club, and we're lifting it and we're thinking, boy, I'm doing pretty well here. And spirit, or who we really are, or our guardian angel, whoever the guides are, looks down and said, hey, you're doing pretty well. And time for another 25 pounds on the bar. And we think, dang, nabbit, what happened? I was doing so well. Now we've got a whole lot of weight on the bar together here right now. And so somebody just snuck in and put a whole lot more weight on the bar. So this opportunity to bring it out here is critical. There's two quotes coming to mind. One is from my Kabbala yoga master. He used to teach that life is designed to push your buttons. And our buttons are getting pushed left and right now. And he suggested that when life pushes our buttons, we will respond in one of two ways. The first way is if we respond from that egoic self-definition, we will respond by trying to change or remove the button pusher. Lots of that going on right now, lots all over the place. If, however, we respond from our essence, who we really are, we will respond by striving to remove our button, thanking the button pusher for revealing it to us and give us opportunity to move a little further into that truth circle from our, that's what's happened when our buttons get pushed. We have a chance to slide a little further into truth, remove one of those buttons, and become a more effective contributor here to the things we're going on. And when we get further into truth, facing these issues that we're facing now, what I've found, we become more enabled to work from wise discernment. So one of the real differences between our egoic self-definition and who we really are is a difference between judgment and discernment. It's so easy to move into judgment watching the events in the world today. And as we talked about earlier, the beast is pulling the change on humanity right now, and its fundamental strategy is fear and separation. Everything it does is based on that foundation because it feeds on that energy, and if we stop feeding it, it loses. So every time we move into judgment, we're feeding that beast and getting deeper in trouble. So when we're in judgment, the way I find the ability to check that out is when I'm in judgment, there's a charge inside of me. There's this little thing in my body that's tense or heated or whatever, however we describe it. There's a place in my body that gets tight. And hand in hand with that tightness, this separation is created. I'm no longer in a sense of oneness with whoever or whatever I'm judging. On the other hand, when I'm in discernment, I can see exactly the same behavior, but I'm not in separation. I don't have that tightness. I don't have that charge inside of me. So that gives us an opportunity to make a difference in the world. Vijay mentioned back in 2011, I created this organization called Kauai Rising, and we strove for 7 years trying to get the GMO companies off this island. And there were so many times when my buttons would get pushed. I was talking, for example, to one of the council members, who I will not mention the name, but At the time, we had gathered 2,000 signatures. We were trying to get the Kauai Food Bill of Rights introduced into the council. I was in there, we presented the 2,000 signatures, and the council member said, well, Michael, how many of these signatures are registered voters? And that just pushed my button big time. I mean, I just got angry and I knew I had to shut up. I just shut my mouth and let my colleagues speak. Because what I wanted to say was, you know, we just had 60 kids from Waimea Middle School rush to the hospital. None of them were registered voters, all poisoned by the GMO companies. But if I'd have said that from the place inside of me, I'd have just been pouring fuel on the fire. I would not have been helpful in any way, shape, or form. Those issues I know we all come up with. Whenever the conversation gets heated, it's tricky to deal with because the heated nature of the conversation is not necessarily about the topic being discussed. Underlying that is this idea that if you're right and I'm wrong, part of me has to die. That level of dynamic is going on all over the place right now. If you're right and I'm wrong, part of me has to die if I'm defended in this egoic self-definition. It's big time dynamics now. So keeping that in mind and trying to stay in discernment is critical in these days. So I think I don't know how we're doing on time here. There's a couple of things I wanted to add if we had time. I think I'll skip a few things and just suggest one of the things I wanted to really acknowledge is the importance of the emerging feminine. I don't know how to describe it or even to know all of what that wisdom is, but I feel that if I had to describe it, it would just come down to the word caring. And it's like every issue on the planet, when those decisions were made, if there was a greater element of caring, completely different decisions would have been made. We would have a whole different healthcare system. We would have a different food. We'd have different pharmaceuticals. We'd have so many differences if that element of caring was present. I had a picture show up in a meditation a while back of the Liberty Bell, you know, the big Liberty Bell in Philadelphia. And in the meditation, what was shown to me was the Liberty Bell, the shape of that was the feminine, and the clangor inside was the masculine, and that they had become separated. And both the masculine and feminine were longing for that healing, nurturing tone that happens, it was created when they're together, working to create that sound. And in that separation, it looked like in the meditation, the masculine was running amok. It was going through the world, striking everything with that clangor, trying to find that sound and just creating this huge cacophony of horrible noise. And that once reunited back into the embrace of the feminine, the masculine can use its gifts and talents from a nurtured, wiser place. And so that feels really critical right now. I feel it emerging. I sense it emerging. I'm debating whether to chicken out or not. Whether I should sing a song for you or not. That would be a stretch. Okay. All right, I'll try it. This song came to me. I was sitting on the beach at Molowa'a by myself under a tree, and this song came in. So bear with me. I'm not sure how this is going to go. This was not part of the plan. I have heard the mother's call. I have heard my name. She's calling me to stand with her as she returns again. Mother, I hear you. I am listening now. Awake in me the memory, remind me of our vows, long forgotten harmonies, shared so long ago, songs so sweet, familiar still, such gladness we did know. The wedding song the Shama sings, leaves dancing in the breeze. The mother never left my side, it's me who must appease. Mother, I hear you, I am listening now. Awake in me the memory, remind me of our vow. I have heard the mother's call, I have heard my name. She's calling me to stand with her as she returns again. She's calling me to stand with her as she returns again. As she returns again. I had one other dream about the emerging feminine. When we went out on the surfboards to block the super ferry, the next morning we didn't know if we were going to have to go back out again. We didn't know if the super ferry was going to try to come back. And Governor Lingle was talking about $10,000 fines and 10-year prison terms. And so I went into meditation. I said, Spirit, that's a really big boat. And $10,000 is a lot of money, and 10 years is a long time, and I'm not even a surfer. Is this really what you want me to be doing? And I wish I'd get this clear an answer every time. But that morning, the answer was clear as a bell, and they said, yes. They said, you are the gods on the third dimension. It's your responsibility to stand up and say, this is appropriate, or this is not appropriate. They said, you may or may not be successful because the corporations and the military and the government are a reflection of mass consciousness. And they're not going to change until mass consciousness is raised enough to support that change. And the last thing they said is really timely right now. They said, in these times, you, meaning me and all of us, in these times, you are going to be called upon to stand up and speak truth to power. And when you're called upon, to the degree that you're attached to the material world, you will not show up. So that was the meditation. And then the next night I had this dream, which goes back to the feminine. And I re-saw all of the events of that night when we blocked the super ferry. A lot of people forget that was the night of a lunar eclipse. It was a powerful night. And it was amazing because the entire community came together. And the things that were extraordinary, we were out there for 4 hours or so. And there was an amazing scene when we came in because we didn't realize the police and the power boats and the Coast Guard were all herding us in. And they've been lying to us all night, but they said, oh no, we're just guiding you. I'll make sure you all get back safely. They knew that the SWAT teams were waiting for us there on the shore. We didn't know that because we couldn't see that. But when we got to the shore, the citizens of Hawaii were unbelievable. They all started jumping in the water. And I got to the shore and somebody grabbed my board and somebody grabbed my my rubber top, what do you call those, fleece guards or something. and someone gave me a dry shirt, and somebody gave me a hat, and all of a sudden I was just one of the crowd, and nobody could tell who was in the water and who wasn't. It was amazing. And I was walking across the park down there on the way home, and this young Hawaiian man came up and he said, "Hey, bro." I said, "Yeah, what's up?" He says, "You got my hat." So we shared a big hug, and I gave him the hat back and thanked him. And then, but the dream I was referring to, I re-experienced the entire night, except the difference in that night was that all the people lining the shore and all the people on the surfboards were all women in my dream. And when the word of that event went viral around the world, it just changed everything in the world. It was just a profound dream of, again, the emerging feminine. And yeah, so I'm into stuff I wasn't planning on talking about here, so maybe I should end at this point. And if there are questions, I know you have a business meeting here as well. So thank you for triggering memories for me and learnings that it was good for me to revisit. So shut up for a while.
Thank you, Bud. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, indeed.
Are we asking questions now or making comments?
Can
I
just
hope
say
so.
something, BJ, Wendy? I just want to, I have so many things I'd love to discuss with you, Michael. I mean, it was just so heartening. My heart is just totally warmed. I've been on meditation bhattis, which are long meditations with input, and you're just reiterating with wonderful analogies, helpful pictures, things that I'm beginning to come clear about. And just this recognition that truth doesn't belong, well, no, truth doesn't not belong to anyone. Truth belongs to everyone. You know, there's one.
Oh.
And the other thing, I'm really grateful that we recorded this. And I would love, if we get this technology, Rabbi Rob or whoever's, Suzanne, to pierce out maybe the beginning and then our business meeting, if it happens. I would love a copy of it to share broadly with many friends and contacts that you say things that are so clear and wonderful. So that was the other thing. And the other thing is I'll just turn over to Hari to sort out about timing, because I think we could use another hour just sharing with you maybe, but you know, I'll just turn it over, but I just wanted to say that right away and give a personal thanks, and maybe Hari can give a thanks on behalf of everyone, but my heart is really touched, and I'm so glad.
You.
Thank you.
A divine ditto from me.
Absolutely. Can I say something? Yeah, I wanted to, it's Al, Michael. And a lot of what you said really resonated with me. I was in the 1950s, I was a Roman Catholic altar boy. And I've been a chanting Buddhist now for almost 50 years. And still going through my spiritual journey, obviously. But so much of what I've learned mainly through Buddhism, just resonates with what you were saying. And I really appreciate your taking the time to speak with us today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Could I say something too? Yes, Michael, thank you so much. I was just sitting here and I just can't now sort of feel how lucky I am today to decide to tune into this IROC meeting, because it was just lately in the last few months that I've thought about how the acquisition of truth, and more so maybe the acquisition of knowledge. I'm not a philosopher, so I don't know about the epistemology and all of this, but I began reading about that, you know, how we as people, persons, acquire knowledge. And for Buddhism too, as myself, it's always the sense of awareness and how you do acquire that. But Michael, you said so many things that I was just thinking in the last 2 months when I had some experience, and one of them is my best friend in high school. who I felt we just shared everything and we had so much in common and that we were alike, but he's a Republican and a Trumper. And I am a very liberal Democrat, progressive. And it was just over this last few years that he and I were just discussing, you know, our sort of belief system, what we had in common. Maybe there's some things in our background where we felt this kinship and connection, but with regards to politics and religion, where was that dissonance or something, you know? And I've really thought about it because of my friendship with this person. But thank you so much. I'd probably want to have you as a guest speaker somewhere if we do have the occasion to do a panel. I would love to have you.
Thank you very much.
Presenter, be someone on that panel. Thank you.
It sounded like you and your best friend were these two belief systems here.
Yes, you know, Venn diagrams, I understand very well. I'm trained as a mathematician in physics, so I do have that sort of rational, logical kind of background. And even in my Sunday school days, when Buddhist Sunday school, I went to Christian Bible school. There were so many things I just could not accept because it didn't fall into the realm of this sort of real world that I was a part of, you know. And that I feel that Buddhism as a religion sort of is, you know, exists in this sort of natural universe. But that's always been my thing, you know. It's very difficult for me to just take the giant kind of leap of faith, you know. It has to sort of make sense, you know, whatever that means, you know.
Thank you.
Awesome, but thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Michael?
I have one other comment, if I may. I just wanted, I mean, it's like there's an elephant in the room with this COVID virus thing that I didn't talk about. And I just want to share 3 items that based on the research I've done. And the first one, I see the beast at work behind this thing is probably why I'm out protesting. And, you know, one thing I didn't share, but when I was 4th grader, I kind of cut myself off from the Catholic dogma, loved to be around the communion, but I also love to be around Jesus. I've never lost that connection. And when I question myself, I always look at him because it's like I experience him as being about love one another. Bottom line, love one another. And I also experience him as never hesitating to show up, to speak truth to power, or turn the temple money changer tables over, or that combination of coming from the heart and taking action. So that's part of why I show up. I also show up now because it feels to me like we're in a time where if we show up together, if we actually come into communion, that's the only way we're going to make a difference. And since the beast works on fear and separation, you know, the antidote is coming together. And just a couple of facts that trouble me, or I've seen. I have a quote. I have a video of Bill Gates talking environmental questions, and this is from 2015, I think. And he says, "If I'm able to vaccine the entire world, we could successfully reduce the population by 10 to 15%. I listened to that and I said, what? And then I bring it back here. I bring it back here to Kauai, just make it local. So we've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 70,000 people. If everyone on Kauai is vaccinated and there's 10 to 15% die, that's 7,000 to 10,500 people on Kauai, if he's successful in that agenda. And I compare that, the last numbers I've seen from Dr. Fauci is that the mortality rate currently is somewhere around 0.5% is the last number I heard. So if every single person on Kauai gets the virus and 0.5% die, That's 350 people. If everybody gets it, if half the people here get it, then 175 people die. So I have a hard time reconciling the choice that it looks like they're going to force vaccinations if the 7,000 to 10,500 deaths on Kauai versus 175 or 350. I have to ask myself, am I missing something? And then there's all this talk about the risk. But the reality on Kauai was that we didn't lock down until the virus was around for almost 2 months. And we had tens of thousands of people on Kauai from all over the world for 2 months. And the result was what? 20 cases and 0 deaths? So what is this? What is all this lockdown? What is the suicides that are happening? What are all these businesses about? What is all the people losing their jobs? And it feels really important that we show up and point out these things, because this is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So I know you folks talk to a lot of people, and whatever your heart tells you to express, I trust will be wonderful, but it feels important. It feels important. So excuse me for going political on you, but that's part of my my Jesus model, I think. Heartfelt discernment, being willing to speak truth to power.
Jonathan, you have your hand up there.
Yeah, thanks. Michael, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom once again. And thank you for your efforts in our public community and really sticking your neck out there. I know you've had some repercussions from the world because of how much you've stuck your neck out. So thank you then as well for your sacrifices. And I know that you do it for the greatest good of everybody involved. So it takes a lot of courage and faith to your principles to do this. And so I just want you to know it's greatly appreciated. And it's also appreciated by people who may not have contact with you, who are able to extend that appreciation. So if I may humbly extend their appreciation to you as well. So thanks for coming and sharing here today.
Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate it. That coming together thing reminded me of I just recently had my little circle diagrams. I realized the small circle, when it gets into the big circle of truth, it still don't have all the truth.
Yeah.
I may get to a place where what I believe is true. That'd be great. But I realized, I don't know if you can see this. I look for a picture. This is the flower of life symbol. Does that show up?
Yeah.
I realized that symbol would be what it looks like when we all get our belief system into truth, and we would all be contributing together. That would be a really sweet communion. So it's a worthy vision for me to hold. So just wanted to share that last point.
Any other questions for Michael?
So what's your next opportunity?
Me?
Yes.
Well, I'm putting new gutters on the front of my garage.
Gotcha.
Touching up the paint a little bit. I think there's opportunities unlimited. We'll have unlimited button pushing going on, unlimited opportunities to remove my buttons, and it's kind of a never-ending journey here.
Got it. I resemble that remark.
VJ, do we have any business we need to accomplish or discuss?
Oh, yeah. Let me just read through the agenda and we can see what's essential. maybe Michael can hang on. Maybe we can just make subcommittees or appoint. Let me just see, where is it? IROC invitation. Everyone's had a copy of the agenda. So basically, I'll tell the items that I'm looking at the events report. Everybody knows National Day of Prayer, which is one of our 3 big events, was canceled. And International Day of Peace in September. Deborah needs a committee to help her just to spread the load a bit. Deborah, Deborah, speak up if you think we need to discuss anything now, or we can put it off.
I think we can wait.
Yeah, I think so too. And just to say, MLK Day in January, Steve has wonderfully taken charge of that for the last 2 years. And just to mention again that we've made a wonderful connection with Melinda Gahn from Maui, who runs a all-state, I'm not sure whether it was a speech or writing competition, or maybe both, but it's throughout all the schools, throughout all the islands, including Kauai, and she has contacts here with the schools. So we're going to connect. Steve's going to connect with that next year and make that an item. That's kind of good news. And the IROC, Vel isn't here, but he is getting the new prints of the thing. But the thing I think we do need to deal with at Hari's and Al is June elections. And what it says here, and then there's further information I'll turn over to, because it's next month. We need a new board. Maybe we can postpone it for 6 months. Everything's being postponed because of the virus. But what I have here is nominations for board of director position.